Eventually, every person comes to a point of decision, a fork in the road, a time when they must choose who they'll become. When I was a teenager, I came to this proverbial fork in life. It was for me the most significant decision I would ever face. Who will I become? What will I do with my life? Will I travel down a path of life and purpose, or down a path of destruction and selfishness? It was and always will be a divider, a time when I can look back and remember before this and after this, a single point in time that made me choose what type of person I was going to be. I grew up in what you might call a very dysfunctional home. My dad was an alcoholic and my mother was a drug addict. This meant that my brothers and I had to grow up really fast and oftentimes raise ourselves. We were poor and completely unstable in every way imaginable. There was constant fighting, yelling, and just overall chaos in our home. Rarely was there a sense of security and balance. For my parents, there was a constant cycle of fighting, separating, and getting back together over and over again. It was a mess. Mom and Dad spent most nights at bars and at parties while their sons ran the streets. We lived and grew up in North Tulsa, in a neighborhood that was full of poverty, drugs, crime, and gangs. So while they were drinking and getting high, well, I was fighting, breaking in houses, vandalizing, stealing, and basically wasting my life. And no one seemed to care. A lot of my childhood and adolescent years were just full of bad memories. Loneliness, because there wasn't a culture of family, love, and togetherness. Everyone was just sort of on their own. Fear and anxiety, because I never knew if the next day was going to be okay. Would we have food in the house? Would we have a home, hot water, electricity? Would Mom or Dad even be around? There were no guarantees. Like I said, it was completely dysfunctional. And let me share one of the lowest points in my life. And it was when I was 15. My parents were separated again. They had gotten into a huge fight. The police were called. My dad moved out. You get the picture. From there, my mom let several people move into our house. It basically worked like this. They would supply her with drugs, and they could have a place to crash for a few days. Our house became a revolving door. So as you can imagine, I wasn't home much. I did everything I could to stay occupied and to stay away from home, which meant, well, more bad decisions and a lot more trouble. So one night I had stayed out really late, and when I finally went home, the mattress from my bed had been taken by someone else. Someone came into my room, took my mattress, and was sleeping on it in the living room. Now that may not seem like a big deal to a lot of people, but it was for me sort of this last straw. So I made myself a little spot on the floor and just cried myself to sleep that night. You see, my whole life was fake and dysfunctional. I was supposed to be this tough kid who no one messed with and who had tough friends who other kids weren't supposed to hang out with. Yet, I was afraid. I knew my life was heading nowhere, but I didn't know what to do about it. I was a nobody who was going nowhere, and I hated it. I was full of hatred. I hated my life, my future, my family situation. I hated the person that I had become, the environment that I was in. I was completely lonely, hopeless, desperate, depressed, and afraid. And for whatever reason that night, not having a mattress brought out all of these things. And I just Well, I just wept for what seemed like hours. Soon after this night, my parents managed to patch things up and, well, once again, they got back together. Then one weekend, a bunch of the guys in my neighborhood, we went running all over Tulsa, causing trouble, making a lot more bad decisions, and just, causing havoc in our neighborhood. It was that night I found myself at the ultimate crossroads in my life. That Saturday night, April 6, 1996, we all went to a party in our neighborhood at this apartment. And one of the guys in our group knew the people who lived there. So when we got to the apartment, I went in and just sat down. It was a small apartment, but crowded full of people. That same guy went into the kitchen and grabbed a gun off the top of the refrigerator. And he came back into the room and actually began pointing the gun around. He was pointing it at the ground, at the walls, and even at other people apparently, pulling the trigger, and every time it misfired. And I was on the other side of the room. And because it was so loud and crowded, I had no idea he had a gun or even what he was doing. But seeing me sitting across the room, he quickly, in just an instant, walked over and said, "Hey, Daniel," and shot me at point blank, right between the eyes, execution style. Immediately, I went deaf and blind and fell to the floor, but I never lost consciousness. There was this intense pain, like someone was crushing my head like a basketball. And I eventually got to my feet and stumbled into a corner and just leaned against the wall. But after a minute or so, my sight and my hearing slowly came back to me. I remember it like it happened yesterday. I looked at the palm of my left hand and saw 2 drops of blood. Then I looked up at the wall and it was covered in my own blood. I immediately went into this panic as I put 2 and 2 together that I had just been shot. Well, right beside me was this bathroom, and I stumbled into it and I got on my knees over the sink. And I remember that I was too afraid to stand up and look into the mirror to see what I looked like. So I just knelt over the sink and bled. I was losing so much blood, I felt as if I was dying. But the thing that I remember most was how afraid I was to die. I was terrified. Again, I was supposed to be tough and fearless, yet that night I was paralyzed with fear. You see, this life here on earth was all that I had. It wasn't that good, but it was all that I had. I had no hope, knowledge, or assurance of what the afterlife held. So I was completely afraid at the thought of death. As I bled over that sink, the only thing going through my mind was terror. Terror that my life could soon end. Well, soon the ambulance showed up and I went off to the hospital. But here's what happened. The bullet hit my forehead and shattered it like a windshield. But it didn't go through my skull and into my brain. It ricocheted downward and went through my nasal passage and sinus cavity. From there, it went into my throat and out the back of my throat. And the bullet then hit my spine, bounced off my spine, and went back into my throat. So I was in the hospital for about a month or so. I had 2 major surgeries, one on my throat to remove the bullet, and the other reconstructive surgery on my head to repair the hole and the damage that the bullet had made. So as you can imagine, my recovery was extensive. I was in ICU on a respirator for a week, and well, things were really touch and go for a while. However, after I was stabilized and placed in a normal room, the ENT doctor, the surgeon who did most of the surgery, he came into my room to talk to me, and he put all of these CAT scan images up on the screen and explained the path of the bullet and all of the damage that it had made. Finally, though, getting very serious, he explained how the bullet had just missed my brainstem and hit my spine instead. While showing me all these images, he said that the bullet was heading right toward my brainstem, but for an unexplained reason, it took a sharp 45-degree downward turn instead. The bullet still had lots of force behind it, and it clearly didn't ricochet off of anything. The doctor said, "Mr. Sweet, we cannot explain why this happened, but we believe it is the reason why you are not dead right now, and we thought you needed to know." Well, for the first time in my life, I thought, there must be a God. I didn't know who God was or what I needed to do with that information, but I knew that I should have died that night. But because of an apparent miracle, I was alive. There must be a God, I thought. Now, during this time, my parents got back together and they made a good decision. They decided we were moving out of that neighborhood. So we moved to a suburb east of Tulsa. I get out of the hospital and I'm living in a new house, a new town, and have to go to a brand new school. So as soon as I recovered enough, I finished what was left of my freshman year. So here I am, the new weird kid who moved in from the hood and just got shot in the face. I had no friends whatsoever. That is until that summer when I went to football camp. And it was here where I met my best friend, Willie Pruitt. That summer when we lifted weights, Willie was in my group all summer long. When we went out to the track for conditioning, there was Willie in the same line as me, right behind me all summer long. He befriended me. And here's the deal. Willie was a Christian, a genuine Christ follower who was committed and passionate about his faith. He learned my story and even used it against me to share the gospel seemingly every day. He loved me, accepted me, and became my friend. Daily, he would invite me to his church, talk to me about the Lord, and hung out with me. I had lots of questions about life and God, but I had no answers. Willie had the answers. He wasn't a know-it-all. He was just an authentic friend, and I was craving that. So eventually, after turning Willie down several times about going to church, I finally went, just on Wednesday nights to youth group, because I didn't want to get too serious. So I would go to youth group, play basketball, hang out with other teenagers, and even listen to a Bible story. All of this was completely foreign to me. And at one point, I even told Willie, Willie, I'm just not into this God thing. But I kept going. Willie kept being my friend. And even though I was resistant outwardly, I knew inwardly that there was something to all of this because, after all, I should be dead. Then one day at school, Willie told me that there was this conference coming to Tulsa, that he had already paid my way and that I was going. Being a lineman and much bigger than me, I accepted. Finally, the big weekend came, and I stood in the parking lot of this huge arena, and I just knew that something special was going to happen that night. I was never going to be the same again. Well, that night, a preacher told me all of the things that Willie and his youth pastor had been saying all along. That I was in huge danger because of my sin. That my sin had caused me to be separated from God. And if I were to die in that condition, I would wake up in hell. But God also loved me immensely, so much that He gave the entire world His Son Jesus. That Jesus Christ actually died in my place and rose from the dead so that I could be forgiven. That if I would repent and turn to Jesus in faith, I would be saved. That if I made a genuine decision to follow Christ, I would go to heaven when I died and not hell. This made a lot of sense to me. So that night, at that conference, I prayed to receive Christ. What does that mean? It means that I gave God a divine apology, confessing my sin and telling him that I was sorry. And I also turned to Jesus, asking for his forgiveness. That's faith. That night I told the Lord, Lord, I'm all yours. Since then, my life has never been the same. My entire life changed that night, and it all started with a bullet. I'm actually thankful that I got shot when I was 15. Because of Christ, I found the strength to forgive the man who shot me. If I hadn't gotten shot, I never would have began to think about death, eternity, or even the existence of God. I never would have met Willie, and even if I had met him, I certainly would not have let him become my friend. But getting shot is what it took for God to get my attention, and I'm so thankful that he did. I hope that God will use my story to get your attention. He is real. He still performs miracles, and he loves you immensely. But if you are not saved, you are in danger, friend, just like I was. And I beg you, turn to Jesus before it's too late. He died to rescue you from sin, death, hell, and the grave. Give him a divine apology and trust him to save you through his work on the cross. Thank you, and God bless.